is the Amidon Planet Podcast, episode 26. I am your host, Joel Amidon. Thank you for joining me on this never-ending quest to figure out how to teach better. Today on the podcast, we are continuing to do something a little different. And as you heard me talk about on the last episode, during this time of global pandemic, I've been blessed with some opportunities to do something that I usually don't take as much time to do as I should, which is reflect. You know, think about what's happened, process it, kind of make sense of what worked, what didn't work, what I want to start doing, what I want to stop doing, what are the gaps, right? And really think about it before moving on to the next teaching task. And usually, kind of like with this podcast, or like I'm currently in my office, which is a closet off of my garage, where I'll finish something and I just close the laptop and move out. I don't close any windows. I don't save anything. I'm like, I just want to get out. And that's kind of how I treat my teaching sometimes, where it's, I got through it, I need to take a breath, and you know, maybe the best light to put that under is like I'm putting so much into it and I just need to back away. But I really need to be more methodical with how I close down, either like actually closing down windows and, you know, shutting down the computer, to actually like closing down either the class session, the lesson, the activity, the course, or even the academic year. And so again, kind of taking June here to be like a month of reflection and basically kind of moving backwards a little bit. So with my last episode, I got to talk with Brianna Hall about this past academic year. Started off like a normal academic year and ended very differently, right? With classes being shut down in spring break, and we go through all of that in episode 25. But so we reflected on a year, and I did that with her because she was someone who was with me all throughout my teaching. And now I'm backing up a little bit for 10 years. We're going from a year to 10 years. And I'm going to talk with one of my former students at the University of Wisconsin when I was a doctoral student. He was in the secondary math program there, and I had a chance to do supervision and teaching methods, and that's Brian DeSalvo, current teacher, and he'll introduce himself in the episode, but had some interactions with him through social media, and I thought, you know what, he's someone I definitely learned from as a teacher, that I learned from a lot, and we again talk about that in the episode. And so wanted to capture that, and we're hoping to have a few more of these reflection episodes. They're still in the air a little bit because we're, you know, making connections, making sure people are available, but we kind of want to use, why am I saying we? I want to use the month of June kind of as this place of reflection. I'm doing a lot of learning. I'm doing a lot of book clubs. I think I'm in 4 different book clubs right now. We're reading Not Light But Fire, How to Lead Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classroom, reading How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, reading Rough Draft Math by Mandy Jansen, all these sorts of things out there, and really learning, but we can also learn from our experience. Again, it's why we reflect. And so I don't want to delay this anymore. You're going to hear some things in the podcast that hopefully make you do some reflection as well. And I know what this gets me to do is think about what are some things that kind of have some impact beyond a semester, right? And so that's what was really beneficial in this conversation with me, is hearing some stuff from Brian that, you know, I know kind of is important, and to hear it echo within his teaching and his philosophy on doing things makes me want to reinforce that and make sure I keep that within my teaching. But without further delay, here is my conversation with Brian DeSalvo. All right, Brian DeSalvo, thank you so much for being willing to come on the Amidon Planet podcast. It is a joy to see you, and people are going to laugh, but when I first opened up the computer and saw you with your Christmas sweater on, which was, I mean, that's going way back, and it's been a tradition that I've seen on Instagram that you've held up, like the ugliest, horrendous Christmas sweaters. How many do you have, by the way?
I actually just have that one, and it is the one that gets worn every Friday around the holiday season.
Nice.
I wore it for my baseball coaching interview, and it's a nice day.
Oh, fantastic!
I was actually talking. Good.
Oh no, go for it.
I was talking with Amanda Hauser this morning, making sure my was all set up, and she goes, "You're gonna wear the gift shop?" So I have to.
That's right.
So
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's wonderful. And that was the something that made me think about, having you or, some of the other, was it prancing orangutans? Was that the name?
yeah,
So we
yeah,
named
man.
our small groups, and Brian was in my math methods class. We'll go into this in just a second. And they had to name their group, and they were the prancing orangutans, and fantastic. Still
Yeah,
hanging in there.
we actually able to still see each other pretty frequently, and it's a nice takeaway from college there.
Yeah, and it's like if one thing that came out of that class is the fact that you still are all in a community together. That's fantastic. And so we're kind of catching up, and I was like, you know what, we should hit record because some of this is some good stuff. We were talking about like transitioning to online instruction and all that sort of stuff. But before we get into some of that conversation, first, can you introduce yourself, Brian, a little bit to the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Brian DeSalvo. I obviously had Joel back in college for math methods at UW-Madison.
Was that 10 years ago?
I just finished my 9th year teaching. So 10 years ago we were in class.
Fantastic. All right, great.
It's crazy how time flies. I got a teaching job in Greendale, Wisconsin, kind of a suburb of Milwaukee. And that's where I've been for my whole teaching. So I've kind of grew a life down here in Milwaukee. So that's where I'm at.
And what are some of the things you do in your school besides teaching mathematics? I know you're pretty involved as well.
Yeah, I got myself involved right away with sports, just a passion of mine being an athlete, and always wanted to get into coaching. So I right away started coaching middle school cross country, middle school track, and high school baseball. And then during the one off season in the winter, I worked scoreboard for like basketball games, that sort of winter intramurals, working with open gyms. So very much in the sports realm of it. Then throughout my 9 years, I held chess club for a year, board game club.
Yeah.
Just some of that ways to get involved with students outside of teaching math. So
beautiful. And I think one thing that we all understand is after teaching is like how valuable relationships are, and the fact that you could reference a game or chess move or whatever, during class is probably beneficial. And remembering how quick-witted you are, Brian, it's I'm sure those come up pretty often.
Yeah, it's been great though. I mean, I teach a very homogenous group of students. I don't see some of the higher end students all the time, just because of the choices that I've made in my teaching. So getting to see some of them as student athletes, or getting some of these different kids in chess club or board game club, or just seeing students who I don't normally have. And then it allows me to see them in the hallways and have relationships with students who aren't mine as math students.
So what is your current teaching situation? So what specific classes do you teach?
Yeah, so the past handful of years, I've taught algebra with math extensions. It's our way of helping the students who need a little bit more help. So they actually have our algebra class, and then they have a block. So they come right away, the same group, into a second class. So I taught that for about 3 or 4 years. And then I just stopped teaching that in the past year because I picked up a course called Alex. And I'm sure if anybody out there is a math listener, Alex is that online self-paced sort of class. And so I started teaching that this year. We're using it a lot for our students who have gaps. And so we're able to meet them where they're at. And they might be a sophomore in high school, but if they're struggling in 7th grade math concepts, they're working through the program to kind of build those gaps. It allowed me to work with a lot of special ed students, a lot of students who are English language learners. So we had a couple of kids translating it back and forth from Spanish, a couple of students who moved from Vietnam, and we just didn't know where they were placed. So we started them in algebra, and they worked through pre-calc by the end of the year because they knew the math, they just had to learn the language.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a cool opportunity for me, just getting to work with students from different locations, but also just different places in math. I teach algebra, just a freshman first welcome to high school algebra class. And if I could keep one, that's the one I keep. I've taught that, I think, for 8 years now. There's just something special about freshmen when they walk in the door.
Yeah, I loved, that was my favorite class to teach for, because in Sauk Prairie, where I taught, they had to cross the street. So it was like Sauk City was on one side, Prairie du Sac was on the other side. The high school was in Prairie. And so when they crossed the street, they crossed into a new town, but they also crossed into the high school. And it was just like the fresh faces, the just all the different things going on, the hormones, just even negotiate. What does it mean to be a high schooler, and maybe a little bit more responsibility. It's a lot.
Yeah, and having coached at the middle school for quite a few years, I think this year was my first year. I didn't know like a bulk of the kids coming in, but like that first hour algebra freshman group, and it's like, hey, welcome to high school. I'm the first face you really see.
Hey,
it's such a fun way to kind of start the day and really start the year for me.
And knowing your attitude and knowing and I'll take this. So let's just real quick side. Brian and I have not talked in how long?
10 years. Through a few Instagram posts here and there, but we're going on about 9 years here.
Yeah, 9 years. And so, but I was like, I've gotten into this, wanted to do some reflection. So I just talked to the grad assistant I taught with, just talked to her yesterday, and whenever that's recording and posted, whatever. But then you today, and I'm trying to talk to my cooperating teacher.
Okay.
So that would be 20 years ago. Next week, Joe Dye, who we've talked about on the podcast a few times.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just like,
I remember that name class.
Yeah. Oh, he came. He came and talked once. You talked about just whatever he talked about. It was very inspiring. I can tell you that. But just having the idea to, hey, let's reflect. Selfishly, I wanted to talk to you, which is the big secret about this podcast. Is like, hey, I just get excuses to talk to folks. Right. But two, just thinking about, what are some lessons that we both have learned from them and be reflective on that? And so like, if it talks like, hey, tell me a little bit about some information about your life, because I really don't know.
I know, that's true.
Yeah, I have 3 kids. I don't know if you know that. It's fantastic.
I did see pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
No, but I have a dog sitting here staring at me. So if there's any barking or anything, I might get up and let him outside. But
yeah,
wearing a cone of shame right now. Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, but I think things are good though. They really are.
Excellent. Well, it's interesting you talked about the middle school coaching, and I think being that was an opportunity I had when I was first started teaching. It was to coach middle school. I think I coached middle school track, which was really great because track, you get the field people, the runners, it's a really big group of
you get everything in there.
Yeah, you get all these sorts of different athletes that are in there, and maybe some that this is their only thing they're athletic in. They just like to run, and they're not going to do any ball sports or anything else. But having those middle school experiences, and then when they come in, so even if I'd go into a class and I'm like, I know one person in this class for that first day, fresh freshman, like they're coming in, and it's like, I know you, and you can vouch for me that this is going to be a good experience, right? Because even go for it.
I was also like thinking that one kid who walks in who is a middle school athlete, but their sport is running, and that's kind of a niche community sometimes. Mm-hmm. And they walk in, and all of a sudden they're like, wait, Mr. Amadon knows my name. Like they suddenly become this star in class for that moment, where all their friends are like, wait, how do you know the teacher already?
Right.
And maybe that kid just all of a sudden now math means a little bit more to them because of that immediate relationship when they walk in the door.
Yeah.
And you get to use their name, and I'll say it 100 times, names are the most important part of teaching. If they walk in the door and you can use their name, all of a sudden they mean something, and it's important for them.
Yeah, and then you start making those connections start going out, like, oh, that's your friend, and that's you're starting to make all those sorts of things. And I'm sure, given your time that you've taught there, that now you're seeing brothers and sisters and different family members, probably, getting all that sort of connections.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, it started like dawning on me. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm seeing the same parents, the same families, and being in that community, and they know you when they walk in. They've heard about just who you are, good, bad, and different. I mean, everybody has their opinions, but just seeing that kind of build on itself and makes that first day always easier. I mean, we're nervous that first day too, but it makes it a little easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing I wanted to talk about here is some of the learnings we've had from each other. Like, cause I'll tell you this, like when I've talked to some of my students now, my current teaching candidates, and I might have told a Brian story a time or two. And it's just because I remember some things that came out of our experience, because I think we had 2 methods classes and supervision together. So I was your university. So, I mean, fairly close interactions, and a lot of that with your cohort, that was sort of the same thing. I had just so many interactions. Mm-hmm. And so thinking about what are some learnings that maybe we've had from each other, and how do we see those learnings in our current teaching? And I don't know if you've had a chance to think about that. I can go first if you want, or you can shoot and go
I'd go
first.
back and forth. I'm sure we're going to steal
All right.
some of each other's ideas. So
All right, you go, because
I've
I want to see if you do the one I'm thinking about.
All right. So the one thing that, like, if anybody asks, like, what did you get from college? It's how I start my year. I send out that 1,000,000-word essay
Nice.
every start of my semester. And it's just
Explain that. Explain what the 1,000,000-word essay is.
So I learned that from you, Joel, with the 1,000,000-word essay, just sending out to parents a brief introduction about myself, who I am, where I'm at in the school, what I do. And then the last line on there is just a homework assignment for parents. And it's in 1,000,000 words or less. Tell me about your kid. Tell me about your student. Let's start that connection and that communication. So I send that out before the semester, so they'll get it mid-August, so that when those kids walk in the door, maybe I get a 45% response rate, but all of a sudden, half my kids, I have something about them that they would never tell me, because parents love embarrassing their kids. And it's like, it has to be the best way that I've started a school year, and I do it every semester because we switch kids.
Awesome.
So yeah, the 1,000,000-word essay came right from you, and it's getting passed along.
What's great is, I mean, I got that from someone in my master's cohort who I think she taught in like somewhere by Green Bay. I can't remember where. Little Shoot,
Okay.
which is by Green Bay. And, she did that. And so I took it from her, and this goes back to a lesson from Joe Dye. Joe Dye says, hey, we're teachers. We're kind of all pirates. We're stealing from each other. And it's like, as long as it's for the benefit of kids, that's fine, And so awesome. I'm glad you're using that. That's great. And I remember one of the responses I got, because I had a number of English language learners in my class. So I had my support person help me translate it into Spanish so I could send it to everyone. And I remember the note came back, a real short note. It says it said in Spanish, he's a good kid, a little naughty. And then, like, she translated, gave it to me, and I read it, and I brought it to him, and I'm like, is that true? And he's like, kind of nods. Yeah, that's true. But I mean, now all of a sudden we have this connection, and the parent sees me as someone who reaches out, and I'm sure you probably get some communication that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just, that fosters communication for the whole year. They sit down at parent teacher conferences, and you might just get, hey, I read your email. I apologize for not responding. And it's like, yeah, but it might have brought you here because you read that email.
Right.
And then I also have an easier time reaching back out, knowing that there's been this communication that isn't just about whether your kid's not doing this. It's you. We've already talked about who your kid is as a person. Now I'm just showing you that I'm following up and I'm caring about your student still.
Right. It's like you're laying the conduit already for communication to go flow back and forth. And it's like, if they have a concern, it's like, I've already communicated with Mr. DeSalvo.
Yeah. It's important for the parents not to hear the first communication to be a negative or to be something that needs to change. In my opinion, it's better to have that positive, we're in this together communication, and now let's just work together here.
Yeah. So if there's a, communication about, hey, we've identified a gap or something like that. It's not a shaming thing. It's like, hey, yeah, we're in this together. I know a little bit about you, you know a little bit about me, and now we can work together to help solve this problem for your student.
Yeah, so that's like my number one thing that I'll make sure I do every year I'm teaching, and it'll evolve as we get further into technology and how I can continue reaching out to parents. But for now, a solid email is a good way to start the year.
Yeah. Well, and then just, to say, like, even to open up different avenues of communication, if whether it's a Remind or a Google form or whatever it is, like, just to say, like, hey, whatever means necessary, I will find a way to communicate with you. So that's good. Excellent. So here's one thing I was thinking about. I have two main things, but one that I remembered is you had such a pride in what you did. And as a first year, teacher candidate, doing your lessons in front of a supervisor, there's lots of stress. And I remember the first time that I went and observed you, it did not go well. Do you remember that?
I do.
But it's for anyone's first lesson, time they first teach anything. And right now we have our teacher candidates, they do it in front of something called Teach Live, where they do it in front of like avatars, like, and so like they get the curve is a lot easier because it's like in this room with no one, just a few people watching. but like you're live, like boom, and there's me, I'm writing everything down and everything. And I just remember it didn't go up. But the thing that was so impressive about you, Brian, which I tell everyone about, is the fact that you were like, you thought about it. I believe you sent me an email and say, I want to do it again and I'm going to do it better. And then came back and you knocked it out of the park. It was just, you could tell like there was a moment that was like a mile marker of your, and maybe mile marker of your development, for at least from my perspective, of like, there was something there that clicked where the first time, I don't know what happened, that, nerves or, like something went off kilter right away, or to the second time where there was connections, there was an ease, there was like, maybe I just needed to get that one out of the way. And it was like, it was the most beautiful thing. And it was just like the fact that you're willing to reflect on that experience, learn from it, and then go in and just, I think, do some of the most, I don't know, pretty creative things that I saw in a classroom after that. And it was just like, what happened? I mean, I wonder if that stands out to you. What stands out to you from that moment? Do you remember that? Does it stand out to you as much as it does to me?
No, it doesn't stick out to me as much as it did to you. I remember the moment. And I can just remember, though, not being happy with how it went. And obviously, as a person who self-reflects, that's not a great feeling. And feeling, looking back and knowing I wasn't as prepared as I needed to be, which I'm glad that moment happened, because it forced me to realize, like, that's not going to work. What you just did doesn't work. And being a little bit humble about it. I mean, that comes from you too, though, the idea of that when you took the notes and it didn't go well, you knew it in the moment. I knew it in the moment, but like, you were one who had built a relationship enough with us as a cohort. But for me to be able to reach out and say, hey, we need to do that again. Like, can you come do this whole process again? And just how important that relationship is. Because it could have gone very differently if you were one who just then immediately criticized, immediately shut down the avenue for reflection. But that's what you always preached to us, was you need to be self-reflective. You need to be willing to make mistakes, as long as you're growing from them. So yeah, it's weird. It's one of those that doesn't stick out as much to me, especially over the course of 9 years now and having so many other experiences like that. But that makes me think, like, what do my current students take away that means nothing to them, but to me, it's everything. That moment of them working through something. Yeah. And I can tell stories about students and they're like, I don't remember doing that. Like, but I'm glad it meant something.
Yeah. No, and I wonder too, like, are there things that you've done, like, through, your time there to think about where you've had those moments where you're like, ooh, that didn't go, I'm going to, restart it. I'm going to do something else. I'm going to, learn from that mistake and immediately pivot to do something else. I don't know. Does anything stand out from you?
Yeah, so I teach a course. It's our Algebra 2 course, but we teach it kind of summer school during second semester. Any kid who got an F in the course just retakes it with me. And so it's a smaller group. And I can just vividly remember there were like 3 days that I was trying to teach something and it wasn't clicking for them. And instead of just pushing through, on that fourth day, I came into class and said, all right, guys, we all know that the last 3 days didn't work. And instead of just pushing through, we're going to start over. I'm going to try a different way. And you could kind of see them perk up just a little bit, just enough to be like, he acknowledges it's not working. Maybe the second way wasn't like all of a sudden they got the topic. I mean, we're doing Algebra 2, like whatever that tough topic was for them. But it came back and just approached it a different way, organized things a little bit differently on that fourth day of the week. And they bought in a little bit more. I felt a little bit more sense of relief because I saw them buying in a little bit more. And ultimately we got through that concept.
Well, you think about how much that probably meant. I mean, so something probably didn't go right in that semester where they weren't getting the content. And so like the fact that, to see a model in front of them that's like, hey, I'm noticing something's not going right. I get to see this, educated person processing, trying to figure out, all right, here's a new path in order to take, because if I keep doing the same thing, we're just going to be banging our heads against the wall. And this actually does mean something. And to have that modeled in front of them, I mean, that's great.
Yeah, so I've seen that. I mean, I've seen that a few times, and ultimately now I have such amazing colleagues that I work with that we're able to sit down for a quick lunch meeting and just like, hey, that didn't go. What can we do tomorrow? And we're really in it together. I do work with some really, really amazing colleagues, so it's been nice to have that nice voice to bounce off.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever had my teaching partner, Shane, come in. Like, so I still talk with Shane every day. Like,
Okay.
I actually didn't talk to him today. Was not feeling the best, but I talk to him every Thursday, and we still, to this day, are still bouncing ideas off of each other. It's just they're different types of ideas. But back when I would go steal a Pop-Tart from his desk, it would be like, hey, I'm going to try this next time. And I would be the one that's like, I'm going to try it. Do you want to do it? And he'd be like, no, but tell me how it goes. And it'd be like that person that you could run things by. I kind of call it I saw somewhere it was written about, it's called like a duo. And like, but you got a group that's even better. That's like Justice League. But so I had like like, so Shane was the Batman, I was the Robin, like just running around. And now even here at the university, I've got one, Ann Monroe. She's been on the podcast a number of times, who I'll run down and like, hey, I'm going to try something, or I need to do something. And she's someone that would like, have you thought about this? Have you done this? And then like, try it out and be able to run things by her. And so it's so good to have those sorts of things, especially, given that there's so many variables, man, with all the school teacher, or with all the students and all the different situations, and, throw a global pandemic in it, you've got to have a group that you can bounce some ideas off of and make some things happen.
No, absolutely with that.
So what's something like recently, so maybe even within this past semester, like what's something that you've been like, hey, trying to do some things, maybe having some mixed results and being able to adapt and move forward. Like, do you have any examples from that, from just your move to online instruction? I think we talked about that a little bit before we hit record, but.
Yeah, I mean, so just to reiterate, we were a one-to-one school. So going into it, a lot of our students had already had access to computers, to the technology that we were using. But I didn't use a lot of that technology in my classroom, just because that's not really my style. It's not how I prefer to get my instruction out all the time. If we're in the same room together, I'd rather have that conversation. Now, with that being said, I think technology is incredible. And I learned a lot this last 2.5 months about how to get material out to kids so that they can work at a different pace, that it doesn't have to be so regimented of, all right, we're all doing this now, and really working with that technology to help them. So we did a lot of Google Classrooms, a lot of videos, using just apps like Explain Everything, or Screencastify, and just making these videos and getting them out to kids, and then just being there for help. I did not do any like Zoom call or any video conferencing with students, but we did a lot of talking through Google Docs, talking through these live chat apps, where I type up the math and put it out onto paper for them. So it's just a different way to approach the math. One thing I did that helped, even if it helped one or two students who reached out, but we had the videos of the math, and then I typed up on the side like the notes that kind of transcripted with all the images and whatnot, so that students who struggle listening and watching and writing, they could read through the notes as well.
Nice.
So it really forced me to get different avenues out there.
Yeah.
Again, we don't all learn the same way, whether we're in class or sitting at home, and allowed students kind of that different way. Yeah.
And that just, it also opens up, if you all allow those different avenues, like, hey, a kid doesn't have great Wi-Fi at home. They have Wi-Fi. They don't have great Wi-Fi. So like, if you did like a Zoom call with, like, it's just going to crash the whole system. And then versus, hey, this text though, on the side of a document or something like that, I can totally do that. Or I can download a video or whatever. Like, I can do other things, but like, to assume that everyone has the same level of access is then going to set up some differentiation within your class that you probably don't want. Right now, we have different ways that you can access it, not only preference wise, but then also technology wise.
Yeah.
What so any other I got one other thing from you that I've learned. Okay, you go first.
All right. I think one of the things that I don't know if you remember this, because I do. I just couldn't find it. It's in one of my storage units downstairs. You gave us a folder to keep all of our readings and reflections in, and it was just a manila folder. And during every class we had something would be said, and I just write it down. That's where like I kept all my like notes of this meant something to me in this moment. And I can't remember all of them, but like beg, borrow, steal, I wrote down. But then one of them was just a very broad quote that I believe you spoke, whether it was in a reading or we talked about. But it went something a little bit, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but like kids won't care to learn the math until they know that you care about them as a person. And that's my whole philosophy of walking into the building. that they're not going to care to be in my class and learn what I'm trying to teach them. For a lot of kids, math and learning that is not their priority in life.
Yeah.
But building that relationship with them allows them to buy in. So that's my whole teaching philosophy. If I could go back and rewrite that, is like, you got to get to know the kid. You've got to get to know their everything before they care to learn. And that comes right from you. I mean, that's
so
yeah.
good. And that, that comes from Joe Dye.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. I mean, that's what's cool. I mean, I can't wait to talk to him as well. But just seeing like the amount of care that he had for his students, and then I was, absorbed that like, hey, this is the way to do it. And then we see it's passed down. Oh man, that's gonna be a good gift to give him. But it's true. I mean, that's the thing. That is true. And there's so much that we see out there in research and whatnot about the importance of relationships and investing in people. And I had Hunter Taylor was on a couple episodes ago. We talked about atomic habits, and he talked about how they, he worked with a local football coach, Chris Cutcliffe, to develop like these groups, or basically there were position level groups that could meet throughout the year before, they're doing football, but they're just working on things. And it's like, they picked some habit that they wanted to build in on, and that would make them better people, better football players, better athlete, whatever. Like they picked something to get better. And they would touch base with these their position coaches, and basically like developing the relationship between the coach and them, working on something and helping them work through the process. Like, hey, that didn't work. Probably should revise it. Maybe we can stretch that goal, and just having periodic meetings like that and that investment. And it seemed like, and they won the state championship this year, which they did. And actually they did a really good job of revising their halftime plan and then winning the second half. But anyway, that's beside the point. But I mean, just thinking of like the level of relationships that were built up through that. And then like, of course they want to perform, right? And like, why is the same thing not being thought about in a math classroom where it's like, yeah, I'm building relationships with you. I'm seeing how you're getting better. I'm right. And like, now they're going to want to perform, or they're going to want to learn, not because, they just feel the need, or they're going to need it for their career. But you know what? Someone who obviously cares about me is saying it's important. So guess what? That's something that I know I need to learn. It's just, I don't know.
And I think you kind of passed over. You said they reformed their halftime everything. That's the point. They modeled it for their athletes, and now their athletes are going to buy in when the coach comes up and says, hey, what we did first half, hey, guess what? It didn't work. But we've done this so many times together. You have to trust me that changing half right now is okay.
Yeah.
And so that modeling and practicing that relationship building, and that letting them gain your trust as a teacher, as a coach, as a person, is extremely important. And the more we can model it in the math classroom, I do think we'll see some benefits from it.
Right. Because then like you think about it, a situation, even with your group that you had in the summer where you did some revamping, if you don't have the relationship and all of a sudden day, 4, you come and say, hey, we're going to change it up, and be like, oh, well, they don't know what they're doing or whatnot, but the relationship says, hey, trust me, this is the best way to go. And there's so much benefit from those relationships. It's just, that's awesome. Well, okay. So then this kind of connects with the next phase, is that when I saw, and we have kind of we had like a unique program where you would do a decent amount of field experience. Mm-hmm. And so I saw you, I think, more at the beginning with that story I told before with supervision. But then later on, I remember hearing and seeing like what you were doing in the classrooms, and seeing like your personality was coming out in your teaching. Mm-hmm. And I think too often whenever I go to supervise them or go to observe someone out in the field that's a beginning teaching candidate, I would not see them being a teacher. I would see them acting like a teacher. And it's like, they're parroting what the either their cooperating teacher is doing, or they're parroting what they saw their teachers do beforehand. And just for the listeners, like how you saw yourself being taught is a lot of times your default is what you're going to start with. But then I saw you like being the teacher that you were meant to be, like your personality coming out. Like that's not Brian acting, like that's Brian as teacher out there doing it, and just the joy and having fun, and like the, seeing the crazy sweaters on and like, I mean, just having that it's a goal. I mean, it's a goal that I have for anyone that I work with as a teaching candidate. I want to see them be the teacher they're meant to be, and to see the joy within it, because you know what? If you don't have that, that's going to be, I mean, one, it's pretty transparent. Like, oh, you're just doing this as a job, but like seeing it as a calling, seeing it as a way to like, this is who I am. This is what it's out there in my teaching. And it's just, it was impressive to see that with you. And it's like a goal that I have for others.
Anybody who's listening to this, I swear Joel and I didn't talk beforehand. So anything I'm about to say, the number 2 thing I wrote down that I got from you was be yourself. I wrote be yourself, and in parentheses I wrote Joel is never fake. And like that's modeled. Like that is what I took away from the program. And while it takes some time to get there, it's not like, oh, I see Joel be himself, I'm going to walk into my room and be that person. Like you build your confidence.
Right.
Like it started with you and you preaching that to us and showing that to us. And not just telling us to be ourselves, but like you were yourself when you walked into our methods class. And when you were sitting in the back of the room, you were engaged as who you are. And then I got lucky. I had Janet Zintel at La Follette High School, where I actually didn't get to see her teach. I had a prep, she had prep, and then I taught honors geometry. And all I got from her was the encouragement to go do something new and be somebody new you are. I didn't watch her and mimic her teaching. And that was my first high school teaching experience, was like, wow. You don't get to watch somebody. I'm going to help you with the math. I'm going to help you build your lesson plans and make you think outside of the box of like, have you thought about this kid? Now that you know, for think about how he's going to approach it. And then she'd sit there and watch me teach. And so I didn't have that model going into high school. She was just super supportive of everything I did. And then during that prep period, we'd reflect a little bit and talk about like, okay, maybe this didn't go well. So like she had the teaching end of it. Then at my middle school placement, I taught with probably the best cooperating teachers, Joan Unmock and Janet Zintel at the middle school. Mm-hmm. And they're twin sisters who taught one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And then in the afternoon, Janet would go be the PBS teacher, the behavior specialist. And they were the best middle school teachers, just in terms of, one, they were awesome people, but 2, they would let me fail. They'd let me succeed, and everything was you go do you, and we're here to support you. And there was just such a good connection with them and personality. We got along super well, and they just encouraged that be yourself mentality.
That's awesome.
And I brought that into teaching. If I'm not having fun, why am I there?
Oh yeah. Well, and think about those messages you got from both of those cooperating teachers. Like one, you're not allowed to observe. The one teach is just like, hey, you got to go do it the way you do, you do you. Yeah. And then just getting that encouragement from the twins to be able to say, hey, go and make this happen. Go ahead and try that. Go ahead. That's fine. And that's just awesome. I love that you had that experience. And I don't think people understand the importance of the cooperating teacher and how beneficial. I mean, here we are, you're 10 years later, I'm 20 years later talking about my cooperating teacher, about how beneficial they were. Development.
Did you ever get a chance to teach middle school?
Yes. So when I did my program, we did 2 middle schools and 2 high school experiences. And so I did 1 practicum at a middle school. My second time I was supposed to do a full day student teaching, actually turned out that I got the internship at Stockbury High School. So there was a threat that I wouldn't be able to certified for middle school. And this is just covering my mouth. So Wisconsin doesn't revoke my license as expired. Right. Yeah. But anyway, I taught with Katie Aspinwall at it's in Verona. Anyway, I'm gonna Prairie Oaks, I think it was called. And she did the same thing, allowed me to do some things that I was, wide open on things. We used a curriculum that had a lot of context-based stuff. And one of them was on like city planning, urban planning. And it was using inequalities. And so for some reason I decided I was going to become a mayor and not Mayor Amidon, but Mayor Don M.E.
Sure.
So I would like be teaching the class and then all of a sudden be like, and I start coughing like, I got something stuck in my throat. I'd go out of the classroom. I'd throw on glasses. I didn't have glasses at the time. Throw on glasses, throw on this suit coat, play Hail to the Chief and come in and like, hey, how you doing? Shaking hands with people. And then I would give them like the assignment for the day. It was about coming up with some math models that would help make a decision for the the alder board or whatever. And like, I need you to do this, blah, blah, blah. And like, I'd leave again. and then they come back and like, what was that? And like, what are you talking about? Like, you just came in. Like, who came in? Oh, the mayor came. I missed the mayor. And I mean, the kids, they thought I was insane, but we did some really good math, right? And they had some fun with it. And all of a sudden, I'd cough in the middle of class, and they're like, "Is he coming?" Yeah, is he coming? I'm fine. But she allowed me to do that. And Katie Aspinwall, she would play like Mozart while they were working on some math problems and stuff like that. It was a very calm classroom, but she's like, you go for that. And it was just like, wow, what encouragement. So sorry.
At the very end, you get a laugh out of it. So it was worth it.
Absolutely.
But no, middle school is like the ultimate, you have to be yourself. And so when I did my full day student teaching at the middle school, it kind of like forced me into how am I going to keep these 7th graders engaged? I guess I'm just going to have some fun and enjoy being here. I mean, we're 21 years old at that point, still learning, but middle school student teaching is always an experience.
Oh yeah. Yeah. The worst advice, try to act cool. Yeah. That ain't going to work in a middle school.
they can see, the kids see through it, and they want the true passion from who we are. Which is why, I mean, if you walk into, I can just like picture all the different classrooms in the school. And mine is not a perfect model by any means, but if you walk in, there's not a lot of stuff on the walls. It's very empty, and the kids always like, why doesn't your room look more like so-and-so's? And my thing is just because that's not who I am. Like, it would be fake if all of a sudden there was all this stuff up here. Like, when I'm in the room, my philosophy is I don't want you looking at the walls necessarily and reading that poster 100 times. Like, I want you engaged with me. I want you to put your stuff away, put your technology away, just be in the room with the other 20 to 25 kids and build that relationship. And just being who I am, it'd be fake, and they'd see it in a minute if they walked into my room and they're like, why is that poster up there now? Like,
the cat hanging there, hanging off. Yeah. That's
and good study habits.
Like, that's right. Yeah. But that does say, I love that the fact too, that, not that you're making decisions and like those justified decisions, like why is my room like this? And it's like, there is a reason for it. Like, if you want to ask, I can tell you everything. Like, there's actually decisions being made here in order to create an environment that I think is best for you. And I want you to be engaged with each other, not necessarily with my posters on the wall. Nothing wrong with posters, but yeah. I
give a quick tour around the classroom at the beginning of the year. Something else from Methods, and my tour is real quick. It's about a 30-second tour of like, here's the stuff you need. Don't touch my desk. There's nothing in it anyways. And let's move on.
Let's go. There we go. Awesome. So we got a few more, and I appreciate the time. This has been awesome.
I don't have a clock in my view, so I don't know how long it's been. It's just been a conversation.
We're good. We got 3 questions, but I think they're going to be good. I'm excited about these. What is the best thing you are doing in your teaching right now, Brian?
I mean, if you guys want to know the best thing I'm doing, listen to the rest of the podcast. It's about building relationship. It's about being involved outside of the classroom so that when they're in the classroom, it matters. I don't coach at the middle school anymore, but coaching high school cross country now and coaching baseball. I've got athletes on my side. I've got students on my side. I still communicate with parents pretty regularly. In the Alex course that I started teaching this year, my co-teacher and I, because it's a co-taught class, we reached out to another colleague who helped us build a email generator, and we email home once a week. It's just where the kids are at, and then something positive and something they can work on. And that changed how that class runs, because every Monday the kids would come in and it's like, oh, you emailed my parents again, right? Yeah, we told you we were going to.
Yeah.
How about you reflect on that? What would you do differently this week? So next week's email is just a little bit better.
Yeah.
So that was like a big change in our philosophy of the classroom. And we saw it improve the motivation of some of those students who are working to earn some credit back or catch up.
Yeah. No, I saw that. I saw that. There was some podcast talking about a beneficial parent communication and like looking at what moves the needle. And like, if you just send out something home, say like, hey, Brian's doing great. And thumbs up versus, hey, Brian's doing okay, but he could work on this. Like, just always like including something that they can work on was like the most beneficial help for a parent to say like, oh, this is something I can point to and say, hey, do this. And now I feel invested in my child's education, and, the child is probably going to work on it, so.
I'm going to throw that question back at you though, because I'm curious. What's something that you right now are like, what am I doing really well? What would I want to get back out if I could teach Brian again?
There would be more, and this is something actually that I'm coming back to from, I knew you guys really well, because the whole class, we had all these interactions, and a lot of times it was those one-on-one interactions after a supervision or preparing for something. And so the smallest grain size that I can get, I want to take. And so something that we do right now is we'll do, I think we did reaction papers. Did we do reaction papers in your class? Yeah. Okay. So we still do those, but now we do them in a Google Doc, and they react to each other and they can comment on each other. And then they do an extension where they think about something that, oh, that reading made me think of something. I'm going to go find it and share a resource. So it's like being able to help them think like outside of, I'm just going to get what I've been given. I'm going to go find something that I can share with others. So kind of professional development. And then they'll teach a little lesson in small groups based off of what we read. And what was beneficial about that is we check in with them before and we check in with them after, and we do a little evaluation of their teaching. There's no pressure on it. It's not graded, but it's just, hey, did everyone know what they're doing? Were you organized? Did you make them think? Did you make them work together? That sort of thing. And those coaching times is like before and after is like my most valuable. It's where I get to touch base with everyone, connect. But during the pandemic, one of my classes, we had to go to, they're developing their first unit plan. And we had these one-on-one conversations via Google Meet, which is a nice thing, part of the Google thing. And so I would basically set up a Google Meet, and I do all these little one-on-one sessions. And I can tell you that those were probably the most beneficial thing, because you not only, making sure they're checking the boxes things wise, but it's also a way to build those relationships. And in a very short amount of time, we were able to touch base with every single one person within a 2-week period, and it wasn't too overwhelming. But the thing is, I knew where they were at. Like if somebody said like, hey, what do you know about this student? And it'd be like, they have this concern, they've had this, dealing with this thing. Their unit is fine. They're doing this. It's just so much information you can get from just a very short touch base. But the thing about it was strategic. It was like, hey, I'm going to touch base with these people today, and then tomorrow is these people and these people. And like, why don't I have that? So like when it's face to face, so that I am strategic. I'm making sure I'm having some sort of meaningful interaction with folks. And so those are, they were kind of facilitated, but I want to be more intentional with them going forward. And I think
I really like
beneficial.
That. Because I know the next question, so I don't know if you want to pose it or not, but what you said ties right into my next question about something I'm looking to work on and improve a little bit.
Yeah.
And specifically, just let's hypothetically say in the fall that school doesn't look the same like it didn't in the spring. One thing I reflected on a lot in those 2 months of teaching was like, I miss seeing the kids. I miss that interaction. And in that moment, I felt kind of stuck and lost on how to make that authentic and work. But going into the fall, that's something like you said, whether it's face-to-face or whether it's through computers, I want to make sure that I'm intentionally checking in with students, whether that ends up for some of them being a Google Doc, whether that ends up being hopefully face-to-face like this. I want to improve my ability to have those maybe small group, maybe one-to-one, but check-ins with students to really get to know them where they're at. Because sometimes it's easy to lose a kid in a class of 27 and then the bell rings and you get another class of 24. But to find time and to make it intentional to check in with those kids. I do it during sports. Why can't I do it in class?
Yeah. No, that's good.
That's definitely something I want to work towards.
Well, something that was beneficial, and like, because I knew I wanted to have something synchronous, but also able to access asynchronous. So we did 30-minute Google Meets once a week for my class, that people could show up. But then in Google Meet, you can have it automatic record. It goes to Google Drive. So then you can put that into a YouTube link that, only those with the link can access. So it's like, no matter what, people could see my face every week. And it's like, that could be just reassuring. And especially for kids that are younger, in high school or even, younger, like just to be able to see their teacher's face, it kind of says like, you know what, things are okay. Schools instead, I can see my teachers. That's a pretty good thing to be able to do. Cause I do worry about with all this stuff with, emotional and social health and things like that. And so how are we taking care of folks? And so maybe that's a small way that you can do that.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. And that's definitely something I want.
Yeah, and Google Meet you can call into as well, so which was nice.
Yeah.
And for me too, it's and I was talking about this with Shane last week, was no matter what, we got to be ready for a hybrid world. So in case a student comes down with it and they're quarantined for 2 weeks, okay, we better have a way that they can access the class and not physically be there. So if it's, got to do something like this where we with Zoom, where it's a wide camera or some sort of feed or stream or, iPad with FaceTime, whatever, there's got to be some way for that kid to attend class. And so that's my challenge right now, is thinking about that hybrid sort of being able to flex. If it is face-to-face, yes, but there's got to be that other option as well. And why would I doing that in the future? Like that should have been done that a while ago. Someone's not feeling well and like they're home, you should still be able to come to class if you want to,
Right. But it's so easy to say that. And then until we're forced to do it though, it doesn't really click until like, wait, that would have been such a great idea to do 2 years ago.
That's right. So a little silver lining with this,
absolutely. I mean, there's definitely going to be some positive takeaways from all of this. I mean, one, it redefined why I teach. I don't teach to grade papers. I don't teach to get documents sent to me and me send back some corrections. I love the math. Don't get me wrong. Patterns and numbers are great, but I teach for the kids and for that interaction and with my colleagues. I mean, of course, seeing people our age at work is always nice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and have those like those opportunities to develop, and those are going to happen in interactions with people, a lot of times. So, all right. So this is the final question, Brian. You've been awesome. What advice do you have for future pre-service teachers? Which I think I can guess already.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, it's the same message throughout. First off, listen to Joel Amadon. Everything I say comes from him, who comes from somebody else, and it's great. Be yourself, be willing to make mistakes, and then reflect on it. If you're not willing to do that, then it's going to be a tough couple of years of teaching when you first start out, because things are going to go wrong. Things aren't going to work how you wanted them to be. And if you're too intrinsic on that, if you think too much about that and let it really beat you up, as opposed to turning it around and saying, how can I fix it? It'd be a tough first few years. But then also life willingly. I mean, I was able to do this, and I know not everyone's situation is the same, but get involved with stuff that you're passionate about. One great thing about working in a high school is there are 50 plus different clubs and activities, and you can find somebody who's just like you, even if they're a teenager and you're an adult, or you can push yourself out of your boundaries as well. And as you evolve as a person, continue finding new avenues. My thing was sports. My thing was getting involved with kids who enjoy the things I enjoy, because then it allows me to be passionate about it. I didn't go choose to be part of X club because I'd show up and just be there, and I wanted to really be present. So be willing to get involved, but also be willing to say no. That's something that was really tough for me up until probably about 2 years ago. I wanted to be involved everywhere. I got to know every kid. I knew everything about the social aspect of teaching. And then all of a sudden it was like, I need to say no. I need to be able to take some time for myself as well, to continue developing who I am as a person.
Yeah. And I think it also goes back into that passion too, right? If you're doing something that you're passionate about, then you can almost get a little bit of energy from it too, as well, versus like if it's something that you're not, it's just another thing to be involved with. Be strategic with those. That's excellent advice. And I love seeing, so, we're connected on Instagram, and, seeing all the different things that you've been doing with regards to either, what was it, adventure race that you just did? Was it like a virtual adventure race?
Yeah. So obviously one perk of coaching cross country is I get to run. That's a passion of mine, that lifestyle. I had signed up for a race and it ended up being virtual with the pandemic. And so it was a really cool opportunity for the running community to get together from across the states. And we all ran the same morning. We checked in through an app, Slack, if anybody out there uses Slack. We have a Slack group through this podcast, the race director. And so we all checked in all day. We were sending pictures and videos back and forth and encouraging each other. So I went out and explored central Wisconsin, the Ice Age Trail for a 31
Nice.
mile.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
it was a
good.
great day. Yeah. And
Awesome.
then you as well, though. I mean, you're exploring and still running and keeping active, getting the kids outside, I hope.
Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, we're tearing up our backyard, but then trying to do a little bit of running and a little bit. Yeah, I think it's just all finding those ways. And I heard someone say like, "Hey, how did you win today?" And so just trying to win each day and move a little bit and learn a little bit. And so it's been a challenge, but we're in a unique situation where I know there's people out there that are struggling, and so that not going to whittle the time away. So trying to use it best. And so speaking of time, I appreciate the time that you've been given to us. And so thank you for being willing to join me on the podcast.
No, I appreciate you reaching out. It's nice to reflect, and that's what this conversation was really about. Thinking through our teaching practice and what we do and why we do it ultimately. If we don't have the why, it's hard to get through it. So I appreciate you having me. It's been a blast. Let's not be strangers.
That's right. No, this is good. I'm excited. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Joel.
Really thankful to Brian for joining me on the podcast. It was great to catch up with him. I guess I'm one of those people that doesn't need a lot of interaction over time and can usually jump right back into a relationship. And it's just like talking to Brian after a observation. But now it's like he's all grown up. He's been teaching for a long time now. And so it was just a pleasure. It was a pleasure to have that conversation. And again, we're looking forward to having a few more reflection conversations throughout the month of June, and just hoping that a couple of these come through, because I got a feeling they'll be just as enjoyable as the last two. So that's about all I have for today. Actually, you know what? Take that one more thing. I'm looking for resources. I'm looking for suggestions. So if you have suggestions for books for me to cover or resources for me to share, go ahead, send me an email at joel@amazonplanet.com, joel@amazonplanet.com. What I'm really excited about is that when people talk to me about the podcast, they do talk about some things that they're getting out of it. And so I know that there's people out there that have some things that they're getting some out of that are not associated with this podcast, obviously. And so send them. Send me an email. Or you can do some social media at Abaddon Planet on various platforms, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. The Facebook page is at Abaddon Planet, the Abaddon Planet Facebook page. Any of those, go ahead, contact me, send me your resources, send me book suggestions, or just say, hey, you're doing this and that annoys me. You can do that as well. You can also do some other things. That would be a great way to support the podcast, is connecting with me on something that you think I should be knowledgeable about, or that would be a great topic for the podcast, or whatever. You can also do some other things to support the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. I just checked in our reviews. We're getting a lot of star action happening. I really appreciate that. If you can write a review, just even a few lines in iTunes or wherever you can review the podcast, that's just a big help. It makes the podcast more visible. If someone, it learns about the Abaddon Planet podcast and you think it's valuable and they go and they see it's been reviewed well, that helps out a lot too. I did notice a 4-star review, and that's from my son. So thank you, Noah. He never listens. It's okay. You want to subscribe. Another thing you could do is subscribe to the Abaddon Planet download, which contains teaching resources and updates from Abaddon Planet. So what I'll do is put something about the latest podcast episode, and then if there's some resources that I'm aware of that might not get mentioned on the podcast, I put them out there, because I guess that's one thing that I really enjoy, is connecting people with good stuff. So the Abaddon Planet download is a great way to do that, and you can find a way to subscribe to that basically by going to AbaddonPlanet.com. There's many places where you can join the email list there. You can, obviously another way to support is to follow on various social media outlets. Another Instagram profile that I have is at Teaching Math Teaching, and that is actually associated with the Teaching Math Teaching podcast, another great podcast if you're interested in teaching math teachers. That's sponsored by AMTE, which I get to do with Ava Thanheiser and Dusty Jones. Again, it's a great listen for those of you that are teaching math teachers that do any sort of professional development or development of in-service teachers or pre-service teachers. And what we'll do is, our perspective is sharing stuff that you would get at a conference, get at like the AMTE, the Association of Mathematics Teacher Educators Conference, but you might not never have gone. And so we, myself and the other two hosts, have gotten a lot out of those conversations, got a lot of interactions with other math teacher educators. And so we wanted to create a podcast, a place where people could connect with math teacher educators from across the country in all different roles. And I think we're doing it. So check that out. And if you're interested, we're doing a book club. We did rough draft math this month, and next month we're doing high school math lessons to explore, understand, and respond to social injustice. And you can find out more information about that by either paying attention to my social media accounts or at Teaching Math Teaching on Instagram. So finally, you can check out the Amidon Planet store or the Amidon Planet bookstore. Both have links in the footer at amidonplanet.com. Just had somebody purchase a shirt through the Amidon Planet store. Any proceeds from those purchases go to supporting the production costs of the podcast. It's not free. It's not super expensive, but it's not free to do this. And so really appreciate any support that people do through either buying a book through the bookshop or through the Amidon Planet store. So either of those purchases, the proceeds go to support the podcast. So thank you. All right, that's it. Here we go. We're done. So thank you for listening to this episode of the Amidon Planet podcast. Thanks to Brian DeSalvo for sharing his time and observations. Just great to catch up with him. Thanks to Matt Mifflin for the music in this episode. And he's been recommending a couple things for me to start playing on the guitar, given this, again, some time to do some things. Thanks, Matt. And finally, thank you to all of you out there who are seeking to teach better and be the good in the world by investing in the lives of others. This world is a better place because you have decided to use the gifts you have been given to serve others. Thank you for all that you do. Peace.